Chapter 662, Seven-Colored Holy Spring. This chapter is updated by Novels.pl. Once he climbed up the mountain top of the first level mountain, a monk could drink the holy spring's holy water. According to legend, the ancient god's mountain had evolved from the remains of an ancient deity. Its 7 holy springs were 7 blood meridians from the deity. A monk who drank the spring water frequently would not only be able to improve his cultivation, but also perceive the holy road and the Tao of the sword more easily. Zhang Yuochen was eager to drink from the holy spring and see if it was as magical the legends said. The first level mountain of ancient gods' mountains was 9 kilometers high. If he wanted to reach the mountain top from the mountainside, he had to fight constantly against an intangible force. After climbing 6 kilometers, he could feel the power of the force. It made him slightly dizzy and his eardrums hurt. He ran his genuine chi to diffuse the power. Soon, he felt refreshed. Upon reaching the 7-kilometer mark, he noticed a saint's disciple in the fish dragon realm crawling in front of him. Obviously, this guy was straining himself to the max. His robe was soaked with sweat, and blue veins stood out on his face. But he was persevering and forcing his way up. Roar! The massive force blasted against him and shattered his eardrums. Blood gushed from his ears. With a scream, the saint's disciple lost control of his body and fell to the bottomless cliff. Zhang Yuochen saw all of this and immediately started his heart of the sword. The blue crystal sword on his back zipped out of its sheath, turned into a sword light and flew downward to the cliff. Seconds later, the sword cradled the saint's disciple and flew upward. Zhang Yuochen put the disciple on the mountain path, regained his sword and continued moving forward. Not far ahead, a tall thin man in blood-stained garments looked back at Zhang Yuochen. He had wanted to help, but Zhang Yuochen beat him to it. With a weather-worn face, the man looked to be 35 or so. He retracted the scarlet holy chi in his hand and said, "Even under the repression of the ancient god's mountain's force, you can still practice sword defending technique. Your ability is quite good." Zhang Yuochen looked up and found a man in a red robe staring at him coldly about 30 meters ahead. 30 meters away, Zhang Yuochen could still smell the strong odor of blood from him. To Zhang Yuochen's surprise, he could not tell what cultivation this man had, but he assumed this person's cultivation had reached the 7th change of the fish dragon realm at least, or even higher. To encounter a master in the ancient god's mountain was not that unusual. What astonished Zhang Yuochen was that the print on this man's collarband and wristbands was exactly the same as that on his robe. In other words, this man was also a saint's disciple from the Long Living Yard. Zhang Yuochen asked, "Which sacred mountain of the Long Living Yard do you belong to?" With an impassive expression on his face, the man turned a deaf ear to Zhang Yuochen's question and headed silently toward the top. Every step he took was slow but stable. Even with the force impinging on his will, he appeared rather calm. It was he who had started the conversation with Zhang Ruochen. Yet when Zhang Ruochen responded to him, he had become distant and unresponsive. What a crank! Zhang Yuochen shook his head and walked steadily along the mountain path to the top. The force of the first level mountain, though powerful, failed to stop Zhang Yuochen. It took him less than 2 hours to reach the mountain top. The tall thin man also reached the mountain top. He made his way to the first holy spring without a word. Further down on the ancient god's mountain, Mujiji and Xunhualiu had been gazing at the mountain top. When they saw Zhang Yuochen succeed in reaching the mountain top of the first level mountain, they jumped up and down with excitement. Lin Yue is really something. He can crest the first level mountain the first time entering the ancient god's mountain. Even compared with Gai Hao, he did a great job. If only I had half of his performance, Xunhualiu said. Mujiji was rather excited too and boasted to some saint's disciples he knew, saying, "See that? The man who just reached the top of the first level mountain is my boss, Lin Yue." Awesome, right? Saint's disciples had eyesight so amazing that they could see clearly every blade of grass and every tree hundreds of kilometers away. All they had to do was run genuine chi and infuse it into their eyes. If they wanted to see the people at the top of a mountain, it was a piece of cake. While Xunhualiu and Mujiji flaunted about Lin Yue being their boss, The other saint's disciples stared at the tall thin man beside Lin Yun. That man. He finally returned to Suzarin. Why is he here? Seeing that everyone was staring at someone else, rather than Zhang Yuochen, Mujiji pursed his lips. He looked up to the mountain top again, wondering who had stolen Zhang Yuochen's thunder. His eyes fixed on the tall thin man. It was an unfamiliar figure. Mujiji, the know-it-all of the Yin and Yang sect, was unable to tell who he was. He turned to an elder disciple. Elder brother Ji, who is he? Why do you seem frightened of him? The disciple replied, you are young, you have not met him before, but you must have heard his name. He is the only monk in the Yin and Yang sect to have successfully practiced the art of the blood sword for thousands of years. His name is Kendong. 30 years ago, he left to experience the battlefield of primitive world and never came back. Few young disciples have seen his face. Blood sword, Kendong. Mujiji and Xunhualiu changed their countenances with shock. They had not expected to encounter the ferocious man in the legend. Knowing Kendong was breaking through ancient God's mountain, all the saints' disciples present seethed with excitement, including Mujiji and Xunhualiu. I thought it would be a fierce struggle between Qin Yufan, Xu Chenxing and Chifu, but Kendong joined in unexpectedly. Well, something interesting is coming. I predict, Qin Yufan and Chifu will succeed in climbing to the top of the second-level mountain, but Xu Chenxing and Kendong won't make it beyond the mountainside. The sect once counted that among the saints' disciples who had reached the second-level mountain, 99% of them became half-saints, and 30% saints. That is to say, anyone who can reach the second-level mountain is guaranteed to become a half-saint. They even have a great chance of becoming a saint. All the saints' disciples were talking about Qin Yufan, Chifu, Xu Chenxing and Kendong. Incredibly, all four people had cultivation at the 8th change of the fish-dragon realm. In the blazing light of the four other people, Lin Yue, though he had climbed the first-level mountain, was neglected. After all, Lin Yue was a new saint's disciple. Both his cultivation and his fame were not on the same level as the others. The first holy spring gurgled down from the mountain top of the second-level mountain, ran through green stones and converged into a stream. However, it soaked into the soil and disappeared before flowing to the mountainside. This meant that a monk had to climb to the top of the first-level mountain to drink the holy water. The holy water in the stream took on 7 colors and had a slightly exotic fragrance. Because of irrigation and the nurture of the holy spring, many rare and precious spiritual doses grew along the stream. They were 1 to 3,000 years old. Each spiritual dose could be sold at an expensive price. Each saint's disciple was allowed to drink the holy water the first time they reached the mountain top. The next time he climbed the top and approached to it, he would be instantly catapulted by the array beside the holy spring. The tall thin man walked into a Taoist temple and took a green gourd down from the divine altar. He went to the spring and filled the gourd with the water. Zhang Yuochen entered the temple as well. He took a palm-sized gourd and prepared to fetch water. The man glanced at Zhang Yuochen and said, "You are talented. Why not stay here and drink the water of the holy spring to improve your cultivation? Why do you want to take the spring away? What about you? Why not stay here? Why take away the spring?" Zhang Yuochen asked in reply. The rule of the ancient God's mountain was that saints' disciples could drink the holy spring as they liked, provided that they could bear it. However, if the disciples did not practice beside the holy spring, they could only take a small gourd out. Saints' disciples of strong physical quality tended to practice beside the holy spring and make full use of the spring to help them break the realm. In this way, they could drink much more. The man stood up, looked at the gourd in his hand, and said impassively, "I am not like you." Zhuang Yuochen squatted on his heels, put the green gourd into the holy spring, and said with a smile, "I am not like you, either." The man threw a meaningful look at Zhang Yuochen without saying anything more. He put the green gourd away and climbed to the second-level mountain. After the man had left, Zhang Yuochen smiled faintly. As he put the gourd into the holy spring, he secretly instilled genuine qi into the spatial ring on his finger. Swoosh! The 7-colored spring gushed into the spatial ring and formed a small vortex on the water's surface. For fear of the saint of the mountain, Zhang Yuochen dared not take too much. After collecting around 1,000 liters of water, he retracted his genuine chi and reclosed the spatial ring. He withdrew his hands. He took the gourd full of holy spring water, capped it and hanged it on his waist. It was time for him to head to the second level mountain. In the spatial ring, 1,000 liters of holy spring water, 1,000 times more than that in the gourd, was a huge fortune for him.